Every day, more and more people come to Bitcoin and understand that it is the hardest currency on the planet. Living on the Bitcoin standard is not impossible. It just takes a little bit more effort. It's everyone's job who already understands Bitcoin and the value to actually propose this to as many people as humanly possible across the planet. The more people know about that and that Satoshis are actually a real number that you can utilize, eventually one Satoshi will be $1. We all must own it and hold it and spend it and replace it. As more and more people get orange-pilled, we will grow in magnitude. I haven't seen you since when we were at the MENA conference in Abu Dhabi.
Oh yeah, it was a great conference. I feel like. Are you more at conferences? Are you trying to get to as many conferences as possible, or why were you there?
Yes, we're trying to get more visibility and link up with the right people in the industry and get our name out there. We actually cool. We're heading to a couple this month.
Oh, El Salvador, I guess, is one of them with the golf tournament of Max Kaiser and the Plan B.
No, actually, we're not going to that one. I wish. That sounded like a really good one in El Salvador, but my golf game is not up to par, so I will defer any golfing to probably our CFO. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm also not there because I never golfed at all. Like I've never even touched this thing to hit the balls. I don't know how it's called.
The sticks, yes.
The sticks, yeah.
We're actually heading to Colombia, so that's happening at the end of next week to the Bitcoin Medellin conference, and then my co-founder Andre will be at the Cape Town conference on January 25th and 26th.
Ah, yeah. Andre was already on the podcast. It was really good to talk with him. I think this concept of Airbtc being a Bitcoin only company, which I have to emphasize, which means only accepting Bitcoin payments and not just like not having cryptocurrency. There's like a difference between being Bitcoin only and excluding cryptocurrencies and also excluding the US dollar and the euros and all the fiat. Like that's really cool. I mentioned it, I think a few times actually in the podcast till now.
Yes, it's an amazing thing. But you know, when we were in Abu Dhabi, there was a lot of shitcoinery happening, even though it was under the radar per se. But yeah, Bitcoin only is the name of the game. And you know, for us, we think it's the best for the consumer. It's the best for us and our values, right? We don't want to accept things that you know, that don't have value, and we don't, you know, all the other stuff is crypto, you know, quotes in quotes. That's all, you know, for all intents and purposes, they are shitcoins, and it's just technology. So Bitcoin actually, you know, we're building something on top of Bitcoin and actually utilizing the network, which is pretty cool.
But it's probably hard to build a company around that, because probably investors are looking like that. Oh, like, why are you not taking the money of other people if they want to pay in euros or dollars? Like, why are you saying no to customers that just say we want the different things? Like, that's a hard stand on your side.
Yes, I mean, it will maybe limit us in some way, shape, or form, but adoption is happening every day. You're doing, you know, God's work. We're trying to do it as well, making Bitcoin more saleable and distributing it throughout the whole network of, you know, humans on Earth, right? So every day, more and more people come to Bitcoin and understand that, you know, it is the hardest currency on the planet.
Are you trying also to live yourself on Bitcoin and get away from the US dollar? I think it probably is even harder on a individual basis, because you have to deal with landlords, you have to deal with other things, and the company is more. You can probably be a little bit more flexible.
Well, I think living on the Bitcoin standard is not impossible, right? It just takes a little bit more effort, I guess. But it's really little to no effort now, because technology has grown so rapidly. All you have to do is have an app, right? Here in the States, you can You can buy on strike and hold all your assets, and then, like Jack Mallers does, when credit card payment comes due, he sells some Bitcoin and pays his credit card off. So it's not impossible to live on the Bitcoin standard. But I think Bitcoin travel is definitely going to be 2025 as price rises. We're going to see a lot more people taking vacations and excursions and whatnot. And we think that Airbtc is poised to really help in this regard.
Is that the best way to do it currently, with like a credit card that you just pay off at the end of the month with Bitcoin? Because most merchants still don't directly accept Bitcoin, only through things like that.
Right, you'd have to use another app for sure, but it's really not that much time, or effort.
Yeah, it's I guess the best way to get into the Bitcoin ecosystem as close as possible. I mean, the best case would be you just have like a Bitcoin account and you can receive and pay everything with that. But how far do you think we are from that? Like, how fast do you think we come to a world where, at least in some regions of the world, you can fully live there? I mean, El Salvador probably is close to that, but I was there, and even there, I sometimes couldn't pay with Bitcoin directly. So even there, we still have some time to fulfill this purpose.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long ago you traveled to El Salvador, but I haven't had the same experience. I've bought a mango or a pupusa or some small item. Every vendor I've ever met down there, they all accepted Bitcoin. And there's carve services, there's everything. But as far as like worldwide adoption and utilizing Bitcoin, I think it happens faster in places like El Salvador or Costa Rica or in Africa, where your currencies in some way, shape, or form can inflate overnight of 100%. Or there's a lot of issues with currencies in third world, second world countries around the world. So, but in the United States, I don't think there's going to be adoption like that. Just because we have this system, it's much harder to crack, right? So the credit cards and how the ease of payment. So all merchants, they just accept credit cards and you tap. And so I don't think it happens as fast in the United States, but definitely in the smaller regions around the world, it's going to happen at a breakneck speed.
It seems like the pain of the fiat system highly influences how fast the Bitcoin adoption in a certain region is, and the pain in El Salvador was a lot higher than the pain that is currently in the United States. Probably United States is the pain the lowest, I guess. I don't know if maybe Swiss is also probably really good, where the banking system works quite well, and the money rights of people are quite nicely treated compared to other fiat currencies. But it seems like as soon as we hit pain points of like hyperinflation or people getting just kicked out of their bank accounts, which happens to a lot of people. Like I have people reach out to me from the United States that say like, oh, I have a bunch of businesses and now my main account all of a sudden got kicked me out, and I needed to search for a new bank and stuff like that. So like, this is not only happening in Costa Rica, this is also happening in the United States. I mean, Canada was a prime example. Trudeau, I think, just stepped back. I think like a few days ago, I saw it, I think yesterday on Twitter. How do you see the current developments of Bitcoin and the pain point of fiat currencies right now? Are we at the 10% pain point for fiat, and we need to be at like 50 to people really start getting out?
I think pain is felt in different ways for different people, and the people that feel the most pain are the people with little to no assets, right, or little to no money. So, and that's not a country, that's not a region, that's literally humans, right? And we make those decisions the more prudent ones when needed. So, as far as the pain tolerance, I'm not sure what people are used to, but as far as the United States, we've been paying credit card fees for a long time, and it's a good percentage of the transaction. So like 3%, in some cases 5%, American Express or other cards, and so the terminal or the business owner has to pay those percentages, right? But what they do is they inflate the price of whatever they're selling to incorporate your payment. So I think it would bring payments down, tremendously. If we're utilizing the using Sats or using Lightning Network or Liquid.
Bitcoin getting more institutionalized and getting more of like that only store of value route, where it's like, Bitcoin is an asset and we can borrow against it and we can just use the US dollar as a medium of exchange and unit of account. We just buy it in the ETFs, we just buy it with BlackRock, and that kind of world where Bitcoin is just a great store of value, and we never really use it as a medium of exchange. I fear that a little bit, where I'm like, maybe because so many of the Bitcoiners, especially outside of the hardcore group, are really focused on the price and really focused on like, hey, number go up technology, and they don't really care about the possibility of a medium of exchange unit of account. How do you see that when Bitcoin might be just a store of value? Are you seeing a danger in maybe that's happening, or is that no concern for you right now?
Yes, I meet a lot of people that that is what they want to do, and I understand HODL. Like from a personal perspective and from a financial perspective, it makes sense to HODL most of your wealth in Bitcoin, right? But if it's easy for you to live your everyday life and exchange your whatever fiat job, the dollars you make from that, if you just exchange it into Bitcoin, and you can buy products with that are similar in nature, or the same value that you'd find, and you can just pay in Bitcoin. And I think it makes the network more saleable. People are using it more often. I do think there is some detriment to all this ETF buying and institutional adoption, which is good in some respects if number go up, but it's not getting into as many hands throughout the world in which it needs to.
It's also what I kind of see is like almost like nation states are waking up, big corporations are waking up, and retail is kind of sleeping. When I mean, that's always a subjective thing depending on where you are. But when I look in my family, my friend circles that aren't into Bitcoin and aren't in the Bitcoin community, they don't really care that Bitcoin is 100K. They don't really care that Bitcoin is doing all those great things. They only see like, it uses a lot of electricity and it's volatile. That's what they see. And it's really frustrating to a certain extent where I'm like, BlackRock gets it, the big corporations get it, the MicroStrategies and other huge corporations get it, and they stack really hard. But the single mom that actually needs it, they say it's too speculative. It's kind of sad to witness for me, honestly.
Yeah, it is very sad. So that's why it's everyone's job who already understands Bitcoin and the value, to actually propose this to as many people as humanly possible across the planet, because it's like being bitten by a vampire, right? In some regards, you want to go express that knowledge, to others.
Absolutely, I love that bit by vampire, and you have to bite another. Bite as many as you can, and I think that's it's also like when you imagine the Christmas table, and you like, I don't know, 2023, you maybe were the first Bitcoiner at the Christmas table. Then you orange pilled one, like 1 year later, maybe you're two of them. And at some point you're like 3-4, and maybe at some point you're like 50% of the crowd, and it gets really good. So like orange pill the people that you love and that you are close to you. That I think that should be the main message that we should pursue. Really cool. And then strategic Bitcoin reserve and all the other things, they also come, but I hope they come later. I'm actually afraid that America is buying too many Bitcoins this year.
Well, I think once people it's I think that's why shitcoins are so prevalent, or have been, is because as Americans we think of things in numbers, right? So it's, oh, one Bitcoin's 90,000 or 100,000, whatever the price is. That's all they see is one, right? They don't see the divisible satoshis. They don't see any of that. So the more people know about that, and that satoshis are actually a real number, right, that you can utilize. Eventually, one satoshi will be $1, maybe, or one satoshi will be 5 cents, or so. These things are relative, but we need, the reason why shitcoinery is so popular, I think, is because they see the smaller number and they're like, oh, I can buy 1 Solana or 5 Solana for whatever it is. And that's ingrained into Americans. But what I've seen in El Salvador is, they see the Satoshis, and it's kind of cool how many Satoshis. They're like, oh, I made this many Satoshis from 12 mango fruits. It's great to see that.
They're rebranding the Satoshi. So in El Salvador, is this already happening? Are you showing Satoshis in your platform, or is it like Bitcoin also?
Yes, so we actually have both prices. We have the Satoshi amount for the stay, and then also the USD amount. So as it fluctuates, we have to show both. Even though the hardcore Bitcoiners, even me, I'm not that smart, so it's best to have both prices, just so the human brain can interact with how many Satoshis equal the dollars. But in the future, when the number becomes stable, for Bitcoin, then maybe we'll just have only Satoshis shown. But
Yeah,
the only payment that's possible is Bitcoin, even though it shows a USD price.
yeah. I mean, the unit of account is kind of the last step, right? Medium of exchange is before that. Is if someone is putting a listing on there, do they do it in US dollar, probably denominated, because Satoshis will be like too hard of a swing?
Yes, they need the USD price, but all the payments happen in Bitcoin over the Lightning Network or on chain if you'd like. But it's not preferable because the fees are just kind of high, and eventually they'll be way too high for anyone to imagine.
Yeah, that's another discussion, how we scale Bitcoin. Maybe we can do that later a little bit also, how you imagine that. I want to also talk about before the circular economy, rebranding to Satoshi, and that overall need for us to push towards that medium of exchange things, and what we can do in there. Do we Bitcoiners actively need to seek out, we have to spend our satoshis somewhere to get that circular economy starting? How important is the circular economy of Bitcoin aspect to it, or is that something that anyways comes with time?
I think we need to actively pursue more circular economies. I know that we've been in contact with a lot of them across the earth, and they can pop up out of nowhere. It just starts with one person who wants to espouse this vampirism or whatever it is, right? That we all must own it and hold it and spend it and replace it, because it's this cycle that we need to continue to tell as many people as possible about Bitcoin. So I think Airbtc is poised to be a part of those circular economies as they pop up, because if you are a landowner in your certain region and you have a short-term rental already, and now you've just been orange-pilled, so it would make a lot of sense to accept the hardest currency on the planet once you know about it.
And you can still just like if you have a current listing on Airbnb, I guess you can just list it also on Airbtc. Is there something against that you just list it also on the new platform, or do you have to switch? Is there some rule for for that?
No, you don't have to. You don't have to switch. They can be simultaneous. And we have some calendar tools that help with the fact of double booking is horrible within the industry. So we want to make sure that we don't do any double booking. So that's the number one goal of our customer service team is to make sure that happens flawlessly. But for sure, you can be on multiple platforms and have Airbtc as one of 5 or 10, however many you use. Normally, people only do 2 or 3, but in some cases, there's certain hotel chains and whatnot that use so many different apps and other purveyors of travel. But yeah, there's many options out there, but we think that we're poised to help out the orange-pilled individual that's across this planet.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. I mean, it's an amazing mission that you're trying here to disrupt traditional platforms like Airbnb or even like Booking.com because it does similar things. You want to stay somewhere for short term that does booking. Airbnb, I don't even know some other platforms because I usually only use those. How is that? Like, how is the fight against those huge companies and huge platforms going, and how is that disrupting traditional platforms as you are like the startup of that part?
Yeah, I don't think it's disrupting anything. And as far as taking market share, I don't think there's a huge take as of yet. But in the future, as more and more people get orange pilled, we will grow in magnitude. And this thing is growing faster than the internet. Bitcoin is, it's like the cheetah in the race. And I think Bitcoin is outrunning everyone and will outrun everyone in the future. And, if you're not on the train, you should get on it as soon as possible, because hopefully it doesn't leave the station. Because once we get to 1 million, once Bitcoin goes to 1 million or 5 million, whatever that number is, it's just going to be harder and harder to onboard folks onto the network. So we need to do it now.
What do you mean with harder to onboard people?
It's the mental investment perspective, or the fact of people wanting to spend, right? So how could you ever buy it if it's 5 million? If you're that single mom who makes 30 grand a year or 40 grand a year, it's going to be very hard for them to get in. And if they do, hopefully everything's repriced in Satoshis by then, and then all is well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I hope probably between like 1 million and 10 million, the natural evolution will be that we will price things in Satoshis, or maybe in Nakamoto's or micro Satoshis, or whatever we come up with, something like that. Because one Bitcoin, like if one Bitcoin is seriously 1 million, and not just like because of the devaluation, but also like buying power 1 million, from today's standpoint, then we definitely need some other currency between that, because nobody wants to speak about like that's like 0.0000001 Bitcoin. Like that's a weird way to say anything.
Right. I think all that stuff will come. I mean, we're so early, Robin, and you really are doing Satoshi's work by going out and trying to meet as many people and document it. So we really appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much. Let's come with to the thing of, because it fits nicely here, how we scale Bitcoin, and you use Bitcoin probably way more than the average Bitcoiner already, because I guess the average Bitcoiner buys it and holds it somewhere. And if you regularly pay with that or get paid in that, you already have a lot of experience there. How do you think we scale Bitcoin, especially because we need the second layers, because not everyone can be on the main layer?
Yes, I think we're going to see layer 3s, layer 4s. You're going to see a lot more layers as time goes on. And I think it's needed. I mean, people went against ordinals when they came out, and they're like, "Oh, it's ruining Bitcoin or whatever." Not really. In reality, it's just testing the network, and that's what it constantly needs to be tested, and to make it harder. And I think that over time, there's going to be a lot more testing that's being done. And it's only 16 years old now, something like that. So we're so new, so fresh. Like in 30 years from now, if you saw reality, it's probably something we never could have imagined. Where they took it, or where we are taking it now.
Absolutely. I love that aspect. And I mean, it's also interesting to see how the future will be, because we don't have enough space on the main layer for everyone. So we'll have to at some point have layer 2s, layer 3s, as we already have them. But do you think there's also room for Bitcoin banks? Like, do you imagine a MicroStrategy, or maybe even like an OG who has 1,000 Bitcoin or 5,000 Bitcoin laying around, him being some sort of local regional bank with like Fediments and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting thing that's happening, is the Fediments and the regional spendable power of those Satoshis. I do think it's the future, and that there's so many things that go along with that. I think there's definitely some privacy things, right? So as far as once you go in or go out, the Fediment knows what address you have and whatnot. But what happens within the network is kind of just kind of gray, which is, I'm not sure how that's going to work globally, but it's definitely very cool to think about.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that one. Another aspect which is really interesting is Bitcoin tourism for me, where we've seen it with El Salvador. I was only there because of Bitcoin. If there was not so much Bitcoin going on, I probably wouldn't have visited last year, and I probably wouldn't have visited anytime because I'm not a surfer. So that's the two reasons people come there: Bitcoin and surfing. And maybe because of other reasons also, but I'm not aware of them. How do you do you already kind of see that Bitcoin tourism, that like Bitcoin is a great marketing tool across the globe for regions, but also for companies?
Oh, for sure. I think El Salvador is definitely poised to be the front runner. It's the Singapore of the 22nd century, you know.
How Bitcoin is as a marketing tool, maybe you have some insights in that, because you see where Bitcoin basically comes in the circular economy, and how Bitcoin is almost like a pull factor for businesses if they adopt it. I mean, we saw it with El Salvador, we saw it a little bit with MicroStrategy. They're doing a lot better now with Bitcoin versus non-Bitcoin, and there are probably a lot of other examples of that. How do you see Bitcoin as like a marketing tool?
I think it's very marketable. I think it's the hot topic, right? It's at 100K now, which, I mean, it's very exciting. But you know, it was eventual. It's going higher. It's always going to go higher. But I think it's great. Bitcoin is a marketing tool in its own. El Salvador has taken it on, but there's other circular economies popping up all over the globe. You know, Indonesia and Bali. I know there's a big Bitcoin presence there, and a lot of Bitcoin tourism that's happening. El Salvador is definitely the number one, but you're going to see other ones come through, like Costa Rica and Bitcoin Jungle, circular economies in Suriname or in Colombia, Brazil, Dominican Republic. I think there's going to be a lot of tourism that happens in those places, especially if you know that you can go and spend a night at a local hotel and make Bitcoin more saleable, and go eat dinner and have drinks and get to pay in Bitcoin for all of those things. I think as a hardcore Bitcoiner, or someone who's wants to distribute the network and make it grow on their own terms, they're going to go to places like El Salvador and Costa Rica and these smaller circular economies, because you're doing God's work, you know, or Satoshi's work, you know.
Are you seeing Satoshi as God?
No, it's just, you know, it's something that there are many comparisons, right? Immaculate Conception, like, where did it come from? You know, there's so many. I like a good story, and you know, I see them in similar lights because I know both stories, right?
Okay, interesting. I had some religious guys also on who were like Bitcoin and the Bible. I had what is the book called from Pastor Coin? I think he's probably known. Pastor Coin was also on. It's always fascinating to see the similarities of Christianity and maybe other religions to Bitcoin and global movements. It's an interesting topic also for me. I'm not that religious, so it's a hard one to get in for me. But it's definitely something I'm aware of because of the Bitcoiners, and Bitcoiners kind of make me more religious. I have to look into more in that aspect. I don't know how this was for you.
Yeah, I'm not overly religious. I just it's a term I like to use when, you know, there's so many words for God out there, right? And so many different gods in many different religions across the planet. But if we all are striving towards this goal together, in many ways it is kind of the pinnacle, right? We're doing the work of, you know, whoever it is, you name it. But Satoshi, you know, you can call him many things, or they, or them, you know.
Do you have a theory who Satoshi Nakamoto is?
Not at all. Do you?
No, actually not. No, I'm just asking because 2 episodes ago, I had someone on who had the theory of John John Nash. Yeah, it's John Nash being Satoshi Nakamoto. And it was the best theory I ever heard. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. But it's still like you cannot really prove it. And I think it will never be, there's never a connection, especially as John Nash is dead since 2015. So it's really hard to prove it since John Nash is also dead. But yeah, it was a good, like, it was the most compelling story I heard so far.
There's so many stories and so many theories that I think are great. It's good to try and search for it, but reality says if they ever find out who really is Satoshi, right? That most likely that person's not alive anymore. But if the person were to be alive, it would be horrible for the network, right? It would be the Vlateric Buterin of someone to go after, someone to look for, or, whatever. But I don't think it really matters who Satoshi are, because you are Satoshi, I'm Satoshi. We're out there. We're doing the work. We're trying to get Bitcoin in as many hands as possible, and for people to understand that they can utilize the network for little to no cost, and on many different. I mean, everyone has cell phones around the world now, so even the poorest people on the planet have cell phones, and I think we need to make Bitcoin more saleable. That's my goal, and that's the goal of Airbtc to further the network.
What does it actually mean? I heard that, and I can roughly get there, but what does it mean to be more sellable? Does it mean that more merchants adopt it, or?
Yes, it means it's more transactable. It's people buy and sell it, or people use it for payments.
So it's just,
and I think that helps with the circular economies, right?
okay, it's just a definition of like, okay, we use it more as a mean of exchange rather than just it laying around in some wallet, which also is I think a use case of Bitcoin, but we should get to circular economies. One thing that I just thought about it, which is really interesting, Bitcoiners don't like to have assets outside of Bitcoin. But if you have a listing on Airbtc, it kind of means you have to have a real estate property. How do you see that real estate versus Bitcoin debate, and especially as you see, or maybe are in touch with a lot of Bitcoiners who have real estate and properties?
I think real estate goes hand in hand with Bitcoin because it's a hard asset. It's always been known as a hard asset. Even though there's taxes, insurance, there's other costs that go involved with real estate, I think there's a lot of similarities. But what we're going to see actually in the future, and this is my prediction, is that as Bitcoin rises, the industry or assets that'll rise equally or along with will be real estate, because a lot of people, hey, your Bitcoin went up to $500,000. A lot of people are going to take some of the Bitcoin off the table and buy real estate with it because they know people will rent it from them, or they want to put their family in it. Housing is definitely housing and commercial property are going to be huge in the future. So when it comes to Bitcoin, people will trade Bitcoin for real estate, and it's already happening. And we're doing it on a smaller scale currently, but there's many verticals in our business that would suggest that we will facilitate transactions in the future for sure.
I think once my stack buys me my dream house, like 5% of my stack buys me a dream house, I might be tempted to do that. Like right now, I'm like so far away from buying real estate. I'm like, not even close to even thinking about that. But once the stack and the buying power of your stack is so great that even with a small percentage, you can buy a safe house in a neighborhood or a country that you like and you have been in since a multiple years or maybe your whole life, and you feel good in that neighborhood. I think a lot of Bitcoiners will be tempted to sell some of the BTC and trade it in for a home for your family. I think it's a fair deal. It's something good, and we should use our Bitcoin. I think the worst thing is to just die with a bunch of Bitcoin and not use it at all. I mean, of course, you can build generational wealth. You can give it to your kids and grandkids and all that stuff, but you should also have some fun with it and improve your life now, and not just have the lowest time preference and don't do anything with it. I think that's an important message, especially for Bitcoiners.
For sure. And we all want to live longer, right? So yeah, go out and buy that cold plunge in your sauna, and do more push-ups like my partner Andre does. He's a big push-up guy. I don't know if he told you, but yeah.
I think we talked. Isn't he also a big calisthenics guy?
Yes, he is.
Think, and I have one question that I ask each one of my guests, and I will ask you that also in a minute. But I think in that question he brought up calisthenics. If I remember correctly, it's already like 100 episodes back or something like that, so it's hard to remember. But I think he brought up calisthenics, and he was actually an encouragement for me to try calisthenics, and I did it before the Christmas holidays a lot. But then it got really cold in Austria with like minus Celsius degrees, so like -5 and stuff like that, where you grab the bar even with gloves and you just freeze. So it's really hard to do it outside, and there are no inside calisthenics things except gyms. So I will probably sign up with like a gym where I can do it also indoor. But I'm looking for like outside is way better. But the question that he got and that each and every one of my guests is getting is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? That's the point where he brought up calisthenics. What is the point? What is the thing that we can learn from you outside of Bitcoin?
Wow, that's great. I would say, I don't know, to be, yoga. I like yoga. I'm not a big calisthenics guy. I used to play sports and whatnot, and I like working out. But yeah, I would say yoga. It's very peaceful. It gets you in tune. I know you like being outside. You were just mentioning that. Doing yoga outdoors, getting in the sun, it's so good. Being outside and actually living, because we can talk about Bitcoin all day and be in these, in front of a mic and espouse about the future and what we want to do, but living every day, right? That's the biggest part. And we want to live longer. I think Bitcoiners are all in unison with, we want to live healthy, long lives. And I think that's why Airbtc is so good, because who don't you want in your house renting a short-term rental other than a Bitcoiner? Like, we're very, I don't know. I feel like there's so many Bitcoiners that have the same. We're all different, but we all have something that's very, very similar. At least the majority of us do.
And it's probably the best customer and guest to have a Bitcoiner in your home. Like that's the one that probably treats your home as the best you can.
Exactly. Yeah, and they'll probably offer you a full carnivore meal and make you do calisthenics, and skip the dessert or something. I don't know.
I love that. Really cool. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And your question from the previous guest is an interesting one, not a lot to do with Bitcoin, but how do you stay humble?
How do you stay humble? Life is humbling, right? I have kids. I'm a girl dad. I'm humbled every day, Daddy, your belly, or, why are you so sleepy? So I'm constantly being judged at home. So that's how I stay humble as a girl dad, just have some children and you'll be humbled quite quickly.
Have a daughter and she will humble you.
Yes, she will.
That's the easiest way.
Yes, for sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jake, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you and where can people find Airbtc?
Yes, we're airbtc.online. You can find us on Twitter and on Nostr.
Perfect. Do you also have a personal Twitter account or something like that?
No, actually, my personal Twitter got dismantled. I got kicked off of Twitter and went to Nostr. So yeah, that's my personal account is the business accounts now. So
That's great.
great. Yeah.
Oh man, Twitter is still not the best freedom of speech. Did you see today Mark Zuckerberg's video of trying to move back, like move forwards and copy Twitter with like no freedom of speech, like the what did he how did he phrase it, that Facebook is now a freedom of speech platform and they are turning down their I forgot how he phrased it. Basically, the tool, the algorithm that censors you when you say something that is not good, and he wants to turn that off and wants to make it free again. And openly says that Twitter, like X, is a role model for that, which is really interesting that he goes that direction.
Yeah, I think it's very on brand with who's the next administration in the United States, right? And Facebook wants to be seen as winning, right? So why wouldn't they say we're the freedom platform as well? Because what Elon did at X is just, I know it's he's doing God's work too, right? In many ways, or Satoshi's work, even though he talks about Doge too much, but we'll let that go. But no, I think what he's done is great, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen in the future, but I think everyone is going to be trying to do more in the space about freedom and freedom of speech, because it's become such an integral part of our everyday lives. If we can't speak our mind, then what's it all for?
Yeah, and I think like the most freedom of speech platforms like Nostra or Rumble, they force Twitter and YouTube to be more freedom, like more freedom orientated, because now people have an exit valve the same way of when we have fiat. Now all of a sudden we have Bitcoin, which forces the fiat system to be more accountable. They cannot be accountable. That's the thing. Like they they lost kind of the game. So even if they try, even if now the best guy comes in the Federal Reserve, they cannot, like it's not repairable at that point. This whole thing. So that's another story. But social media, it's just a website that could be repairable, and will be interesting how Nostra influences Twitter, how Twitter influences Facebook, how Facebook influences YouTube, and I hope we get to a point where all the platforms are just way more freedom loving.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a low time preference as well, right? I think it's going to take time, but it starts with everyone, right? So we all must think in unison that free speech is like an inherent right, and we should all fight for it in some way, shape, or form. And if we demand it, right, if we actually want it at scale, then it's more, it's easier. It's easierly. That's not a word. It's accepted much easier. But for as far as Nostr, I would like to see a lot more growth in 2025 because it's still a little dismal when we're talking about numbers of people using the platform. But I think people need to use Nostr. They need to use Airbtc, right? And we need to continue to make the network more saleable, and we need to distribute as many sats as we can before the sats get out of reach, right? Before we hit 5 million, like you think we are.
Absolutely, 5 million and 10 million, and eventually the US dollar is no longer there anymore. It's
That's
just like
scary.
Yeah, that's scary. The only thing is like once we reach a million or 5 million, what's the buying power then of 5 million? Like that's the only question of like, is 5 million then 5 million? Probably not. 5 million is probably then at that point like more like 800,000. I don't know what the inflation rate there will be, but it will be fun to see. Thank you so much, Jake, for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow for another episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you.